A routine afternoon at a dental clinic erupted into chaos when two thieves stormed inside, shouting demands and ordering staff to hand over money. But the criminals had no idea they had walked straight into the worst possible scenario. Sitting among the patients was an off-duty police officer who reacted with lightning speed the moment the threat unfolded. In one swift motion, he drew his weapon and confronted the intruders head-on. Stunned and unprepared for resistance, the robbers froze, then bolted in a frantic retreat. A quiet late-night visit to a hamburger shop exploded into chaos when a dramatic shooting unfolded right in front of stunned customers. The incident began when two robbers arrived on a motorcycle, with one of them storming into the diner armed and threatening staff behind the counter. What had been a calm scene instantly descended into panic. Among the customers, however, was an off-duty military police officer who reacted with lightning speed. As the gunman advanced, the officer drew his weapon and fired, successfully neutralizing the armed suspect and halting the robbery attempt on the spot. Despite the intense exchange, no civilians were harmed and no property was stolen, a result authorities credit to the officer's bravery and decisive action. Pasto, Colombia. A routine day inside a small neighborhood shop exploded into chaos when two armed robbers, posing as ordinary customers, suddenly drew their weapons. In a heartbeat, they aimed their guns at a young woman and demanded cash, valuables, anything they could grab. Fear swept through the store. The mother clutched her baby and ducked behind the counter, desperately trying to shield the child as the situation spiraled toward catastrophe. Around 9:30 p.m., a couple sitting inside their Ford Fiesta was confronted by three armed men who jumped out of a gray vehicle and surrounded them, demanding their belongings. What the attackers didn't realize was that their intended victim was an off-duty federal agent. Reacting instantly, the agent drew his firearm and opened fire, triggering a brief but intense shootout. One of the suspects, identified as Agostem Alexander Gomes, was captured at the scene, while the remaining assailants fled, abandoning their wounded accomplice. Police are now working to identify and locate the other suspects involved. A dangerous armed gang kicked down the door of a family home in what appeared to be a violent, targeted robbery. The intruders rushed inside, threatening the man and his entire family as chaos erupted within seconds. But the homeowner was ready. The moment he saw the armed attackers charging in, he immediately opened fire, acting to protect his wife and children. His swift, decisive response sent the gang into a state of panic. Caught off guard by the resistance, the criminals scrambled to escape, stumbling over each other as they retreated and fled the property. A shocking video captured the dramatic moment an off-duty police officer opened fire to protect his family during an attempted robbery right at their doorstep. As the wife stepped out to open the gate, an armed attacker suddenly approached their vehicle, forcing the husband, a police officer, to fire back from inside the car in self-defense. A would-be thief thought he had found the perfect opportunity. A parked car, engine running, and no owner in sight. He lunged into the driver's seat, ready to take off within seconds. But his plan ended just as fast as it began. Spotting the intrusion, the owner sprinted back to the vehicle, grabbed the thief by the collar, and yanked him out before he could even shift into gear. The confrontation ended with the criminal stunned, and the car safely back in its rightful hands. Santa Catarina, Brazil. A violent home ambush erupted into a chaotic shootout when a woman opened fire on a group of armed robbers in a desperate bid to save her husband. The attack unfolded in mere seconds. 3 suspects slipped through the family's open gate, crossed the yard with calculated precision, and immediately grabbed the husband, attempting to steal his motorcycle. The robbers had the upper hand until the wife spotted the assault. Refusing to freeze or flee, she sprinted for her self-defense firearm and unleashed a rapid burst of gunfire. The sudden resistance shattered the attackers' plan, sending them diving for cover as the yard exploded with chaos. A frightening robbery unfolded inside a pharmacy when 2 armed attackers stormed in. One moved toward a couple at the cashier, while the other held an employee hostage, escalating the situation within seconds. Amid the chaos, a male customer, who turned out to be an off-duty military police officer, intervened. He quickly drew his weapon and disarmed one of the suspects. A violent struggle then erupted with the second attacker, who tried desperately to reclaim the firearm. But the officer maintained control, overpowering both robbers and securing their arrest before they could harm anyone. Three men were talking with 2 women at the counter when the suspect, a 20-year-old man, walked in and announced a robbery. The officer immediately moved behind the counter, drew his firearm, and opened fire. The robber tried to escape the hail of bullets but returned and shot at the officer, triggering a close-range confrontation. The Ceará military police reported that the suspect, Gustavo Nascimento da Silva, 20, had prior records for robbery. After being shot, he was arrested while seeking medical treatment for his injuries. The officer was also struck by gunfire and transported to a hospital, where he remains in stable condition. A shocking incident unfolded at a car wash in southeast Melbourne when a woman became the target of a violent carjacking attack. The victim fought back with remarkable determination after the assailant struck her on the head with a weapon. Fortunately, several brave bystanders intervened just in time. helping police track down and arrest the suspect on a nearby bus. The attack has ignited widespread anger within the local community, where concerns over rising crime and the perceived failures of the current justice system continue to grow. Residents voiced frustration over lenient bail rules, saying they no longer feel adequately protected and are being forced to defend themselves from ever-present threats. A crafty thief took advantage of a moment when a shop was left unattended to carry out a brazen theft. Spotting a forgotten key, the man used it to unlock the cash drawer and began helping himself to the money inside. But his scheme didn't last long. The shop owner arrived just in time and intercepted the thief on the spot, stopping the crime before the suspect could escape. Cornered and exposed, the thief was forced to return every bit of the stolen cash before leaving the scene. Two robbers, pretending to be harmless pedestrians, waited on the roadside for the perfect moment. When a white car drove past, they made their move, suddenly stepping in front of a man and threatening him, demanding his motorcycle. But the victim refused to panic. Staying calm under pressure, he stalled for time, choosing his words carefully and avoiding any move that could provoke violence. What seemed like a desperate delay tactic soon became his lifeline. In a stroke of luck and timing, police officers arrived just in time, stopping the robbery and rescuing the man before the criminals could act. A robbery attempt at a beverage store was fully recorded by the establishment's surveillance cameras, revealing a tense but brief confrontation between the suspect and the store owner. The footage shows a man in a white shirt approaching the front of the store moments before the incident. Shortly after he entered, a dispute broke out when the suspect threatened the owner, prompting a swift reaction from those inside. During the commotion, one employee was lightly injured while trying to retreat back into the store. Authorities later confirmed that everyone else inside the business was safe and unharmed. The situation was quickly brought under control at the scene. The store owner, who is also a licensed attorney, immediately contacted the police and provided a full report of what occurred. An off-duty military police officer was confronted by two armed attackers on a motorcycle while walking alone in São Paulo. One suspect jumped off the bike, pointed a gun at him, and attempted to carry out the robbery. But the assailants underestimated their target. In a split second, the officer drew his weapon and opened fire, stopping both suspects before they had a chance to react. The swift response brought the attempted robbery to an abrupt end. Authorities say the incident highlights the officer's remarkable composure and courage, even while off duty. Two masked robbers, armed with a handgun, approached a man sitting on his motorcycle, fully prepared to carry out a violent holdup. But within seconds, the situation took an unexpected turn. Within moments, their aggression shifted to uncertainty. The two gunmen hesitated, stepped back, then abruptly retreated. They jumped onto their motorcycle and sped away, abandoning the robbery entirely. A tense and chaotic scene erupted on Friday afternoon at the intersection of Carrera 51B and Calle 106 in Barranquilla's Villa Santos neighborhood. Security footage captured the moment two men on a black motorcycle closed in on a businessman just as he stepped out of a supermarket. While a salesman was helping load items into the vehicle, the passenger suddenly pulled a gun and issued a threat, turning an ordinary errand into a life-or-death confrontation. But the attackers had miscalculated badly. Unbeknownst to them, their target was armed. In a split-second burst of instinct and precision, the businessman drew his own firearm and opened fire in self-defense, unleashing a rapid counterattack that sent both criminals scrambling in sheer panic. The would-be robbers sped away in chaos, their plan collapsing the moment their victim fought back. While off-duty and spending time with a friend, a police officer suddenly found himself targeted by two armed men attempting to steal his motorcycle. But instead of panicking, he reacted with tactical precision. The officer briefly pulled back, assessing the threat in a heartbeat before launching a decisive counterattack. His swift, strategic response sent one attacker retreating immediately, while the other abandoned the robbery altogether and fled the scene in fear. What looked like an ordinary afternoon inside a bustling shopping mall exploded into panic when four thieves executed a coordinated ambush on a jewelry store. At first, two of them slipped in posing as regular customers, but within moments, two more stormed through the entrance, flashing weapons and ordering employees to surrender high-value merchandise. Surveillance cameras captured the chaos as staff were threatened and display cases were shattered in seconds. The criminals believed the operation was fully under control. They were wrong. The heist unraveled the instant a highly trained security guard stepped out from a restricted area, calm, composed, and ready to intervene. His sudden appearance shifted the balance instantly, catching the thieves off guard and bringing their easy money fantasy to an abrupt end. A highly unusual robbery unfolded at a local restaurant when a man dressed in a bright, colorful outfit entered the establishment, brandishing a firearm and demanding money from the cashier. When the cashier refused, the suspect forced his way into the kitchen, threatening staff and shouting for cash. Fearing for their safety, the employees threw him a small amount of money. The robber crouched down, hurriedly gathering the scattered bills before walking out with misplaced confidence, as if he had carried out a flawless heist. His escape, however, was short-lived. Police officers arrived moments later and swiftly subdued him before he could cause further harm. The suspect's unusual disguise and reckless actions ultimately led to a quick arrest and a direct trip to jail. A man wearing a green t-shirt was refueling his car with a friend when two robbers on a motorbike suddenly sped in and targeted a nearby victim. Without hesitation, he drew his firearm and neutralized one of the attackers, rescuing the victim from the attempted robbery. A brazen hijacking attempt in Morningside, Johannesburg was caught on CCTV and ended with a dramatic escape that likely saved a woman's life. Footage shows a gang of more than 4 masked, armed men targeting a Range Rover on January 9th. The victim had just arrived at the entrance of her residential complex when a silver SUV tailgated her vehicle through the boom gate. Within seconds, 4 robbers jumped out, one of them raising a firearm and charging toward the driver's door. But the would-be hijackers never expected what happened next. The driver reacted instantly. Realizing she had no time to spare, she slammed the accelerator and rammed straight through the iron gate, bursting into the complex and out of the gunman's reach. Startled and disorganized, the attackers immediately abandoned their pursuit. It remains unclear how the complex's security personnel responded during the incident. A man became the target of an elaborately staged robbery when 2 attackers ambushed him in the middle of the road. The most shocking part was the sudden flash of signal lights, almost identical to those used by law enforcement vehicles. But behind those lights were 2 imposters posing as police officers, armed with dangerous weapons, heavy hammers. Fortunately, the victim quickly sensed something was wrong and immediately accelerated away, escaping what could have turned into a violent assault. The moment a man stepped out of his car, a group of robbers charged toward him in an apparent ambush. Acting instantly, he drew his firearm and opened fire in self-defense, forcing one of the would-be attackers to flee in panic. Authorities are reviewing the circumstances of the attempted robbery as the investigation continues. A Northampton shopkeeper says he feared for his life after 2 masked teenagers stormed his newsagent with large knives. Instead of surrendering, Muthlekumaran Tharmaratnam fought back, throwing a display stand and bottles at the attackers. The robbers quickly retreated and fled empty-handed. The seamless coordination between officers from the Tigray Operations Center, COT, and the city's security camera system led to the arrest of a man who attempted to steal a woman's belongings. The suspect was immediately placed at the disposal of the justice system. The incident unfolded in downtown Tigray, at the intersection of Beruti and Bolivar streets, where security cameras captured a man violently struggling with a woman in an attempt to rob her. When the thief failed to complete the assault, he fled along Entre Rios Street. From the monitoring center, COT officers and the Community Prevention Command were alerted to intercept the suspect, who was described as wearing a red sweatshirt, a backpack, gray pants, and black sneakers. The fugitive was seen heading down Almirante Brown Street toward España and later attempting to slip into the neighboring district of San Fernando. Thanks to real-time video surveillance, authorities tracked his movements closely, enabling officers to apprehend him within minutes. He was subsequently taken to a police station and placed before judicial authorities. Tigra currently operates more than 1,500 surveillance cameras distributed throughout the district, monitoring security incidents, traffic accidents, and any activity that may disrupt public order. This system is supported by units from citizen protection, civil defense, and traffic, which patrol neighborhoods in coordinated teams and respond rapidly to any alert. A woman walking alone became the target of a swift street robbery when two criminals on a motorcycle closed in. One suspect jumped off, lunged toward her, and violently yanked her handbag in a rapid snatch and grab attack. But the crime lasted only seconds. A passing driver witnessed the assault and reacted with extraordinary speed. In a decisive act to stop the getaway, he swerved his vehicle directly toward the accomplice waiting on the motorcycle, slamming into him and bringing the robbery to an abrupt, stunning halt. A bold attack turned into instant justice, thanks to one driver who refused to look the other way. Security cameras captured a dramatic moment at a gas station as police officers in an unmarked vehicle closed in on a red car, swiftly cornering and subduing a group of robbery suspects. According to authorities, the suspects had earlier targeted a female tourist, stealing cash, a cell phone, and several important documents. After an intense half-day pursuit, officers tracked down the group and made the arrests without further incident. Investigators say the suspects are now believed to be connected to multiple recent robberies, and the case is being expanded accordingly. A parked car became the target of two thugs who approached aggressively, threatening the passengers and demanding money in exchange for their safety. Fearing for their lives, the victims complied and quickly drove away. But the criminals didn't stop there. They stayed at the spot, waiting for their next target. Unfortunately for them, police arrived at the perfect moment, catching the duo red-handed and bringing their little business to an abrupt end. As the officer approached the suspect, the man suddenly pulled a knife from his waistband, a split second away from disaster. Instead of pulling the trigger, the officer made a bold, fearless decision. He charged in with his bare hands and wrestled the knife away. An attempted armed robbery was abruptly halted when two family dogs intervened with astonishing speed. The incident unfolded as an elderly man arrived at his home and was suddenly ambushed by two gunmen who dragged him from his vehicle at gunpoint in an effort to steal both the car and his belongings. Before the attackers could escape, the man's granddaughter shouted a command, prompting the dogs to charge at the robbers, barking aggressively and biting as they drove the men back in panic. A brazen snatch-and-grab robbery unfolded inside a small shop, where a group of greedy criminals targeted a hard-working store owner. At first, the owner remained calm and observant, quietly assessing the situation, a demeanor that made the attackers believe they had complete control. But that confidence collapsed in an instant. The moment the timing was right, the shop owner launched a decisive and forceful counterattack, catching the criminals completely off guard. Shocked and overwhelmed, the robbers plunged into panic and fled the scene in fear. A routine knock at the door turned into a dangerous confrontation when a man, home alone, opened it to find a robber pointing a gun directly at him. Instead of retreating, the victim reacted instantly. He lunged forward, tackling the armed suspect to the ground and managing to wrestle the weapon away during the struggle. Once disarmed and subdued, the robber was unable to continue the attack. Police arrived shortly after and took the suspect into custody. Two criminals were arrested after stealing a truck in the town of Ricardo Rojas. Security cameras captured the entire incident. The operation began when the Tigre Operations Center spotted, through one of its cameras at Elizalde and Sarmiento, two individuals intercepting a truck to rob it. Patrol units from COT and CPC were immediately alerted. As officers rushed to the scene, the monitoring center continued tracking the suspects and confirmed that one of them was carrying a long gun. Upon arrival, police chased the suspects for several meters before apprehending both men. The weapon was seized, and the detainees were taken to the nearest station to be placed at the disposal of the prosecutor's office. Once again, Tigre's security camera network proved crucial in stopping a crime quickly and effectively. The municipality operates more than 1,300 cameras, monitoring incidents, traffic accidents, and any situation that threatens public order, supported by rapid response patrol units. A failed theft attempt unfolded at an active construction site when a man stepped out of a red car with the clear intention of stealing property. But his plan unraveled immediately. What he didn't anticipate was the swift reaction of those around him. The construction workers on site quickly noticed the suspicious activity and moved in to stop the crime before it could progress any further. Shocking video footage shows the moment two masked attackers ambushed a cyclist in broad daylight during a violent bikejacking in Hopwood, Worcestershire, just south of Birmingham. Their plan quickly unraveled. Nearby residents rushed to the cyclists' aid, confronting the attackers and forcing them to flee without the bike. Police are now reviewing the footage as the investigation continues. In Brazil, a bold robbery attempt at a busy mini-market took a shocking turn when four armed suspects burst inside, demanding cash and cigarettes. Amid the chaos, the male cashier remained remarkably calm. Pretending to follow their orders, he stepped outside under the pretext of a routine shift change, then swiftly pulled down the heavy security shutter, trapping the robbers inside the store. Realizing too late they had been outmaneuvered, the criminals frantically searched for another exit, but every route was sealed. Within minutes, police arrived and arrested all four suspects, ending the heist with a clean, decisive victory for the clever cashier who refused to panic. Two men arrived on a motorcycle, and one of them attempted to steal a parked motorbike. The thief tried to start the bike and might have succeeded if it hadn't been secured with a disc lock. He fell while trying to ride away, yet still stubbornly attempted to take the vehicle by any means possible. His lack of common sense was truly baffling. A carjacking ambush turned into a complete failure when two attackers attempted to block a vehicle and force the driver out, but their plan unraveled in seconds. Sensing the danger instantly, the driver made a split-second decision, slamming the accelerator and steering hard around a sharp corner. The sudden maneuver caught the ambushers off guard, allowing the vehicle to break free before the criminals could react. Two armed suspects stormed into a convenience store in a bold and reckless attempt at robbery. Without warning, one of them began firing wildly, putting everyone inside at risk. Fortunately, the store owner and an employee managed to take cover just in time. Acting in self-defense, they returned fire and triggered the alarm. Startled and overwhelmed, the robbers panicked and fled the scene within minutes, leaving their plan in ruins. A brazen carjacking attempt was stopped just in time thanks to the courage of two men who were determined to protect their family at any cost. When criminals tried to seize the vehicle, the two men reacted instantly and fearlessly, confronting the threat head-on. Their decisive actions broke the attackers' momentum and prevented the situation from escalating into tragedy. It was a quiet evening. An old man, with silver hair and a simple outfit, pulled up to an ATM in his worn-out car to withdraw a bit of spending money. Unbeknownst to him, a pair of eyes had been watching from the shadows. A would-be robber lurked nearby, silently observing, waiting for the perfect moment. When the old man withdrew his cash and turned around, the thug lunged forward, confident this would be an easy score. He was wrong. Without hesitation, the old man shifted into combat mode. His eyes sharpened, and his body moved with smooth, practiced precision, like someone who had trained for this moment his entire life. As the attacker raised his arm, the old man delivered a punch straight to his face. What followed was a seamless blend of offense and defense, each movement perfectly timed with his breath. The robber tried to fight back, but every attempt was blocked with effortless skill. Within seconds, he stumbled backward, defeated. Then he turned and ran, not even daring to look over his shoulder. A cargo truck driver displayed extraordinary skill and split-second decision-making, transforming what could have been a dangerous robbery into a decisive and heroic response. As criminals attempted to intercept his vehicle, the driver reacted with flawless precision, executing a sharp, controlled maneuver that broke the ambush and neutralized the threat before it could escalate. What began as a high-risk assault ended in an instant, thanks to the driver's remarkable awareness, quick reflexes, and fearless resolve. It was an ordinary day that suddenly turned into every parent's worst nightmare. Intruders targeted a quiet home and attempted to force their way inside. One of them began violently kicking and pushing the door, trying desperately to break it open, but the mother on the other side held it shut with every ounce of strength she had. This incredible mother refused to surrender. Summoning sheer determination, she braced herself against the door, fighting off the intruder's force as her young daughter stood behind her, terrified. Her only thought was protecting her child at all costs. Blow after blow shook the door, yet she didn't let go. Even as fear surged through her, she transformed it into courage, refusing to allow the attackers to cross the threshold of her home. In the end, her unyielding strength and determination overwhelmed the intruders. Realizing they couldn't break past her resistance, they fled in frustration and humiliation. Though shaken, the family remained safe, thanks to the extraordinary bravery of a mother who proved that nothing is stronger than a parent's instinct to protect their child. Guarulhos, São Paulo. A violent robbery attempt took a shocking turn when an off-duty Municipal Civil Guard, GCM, used an extraordinary tactic to survive an armed ambush. Security cameras captured the intense moment as a husband and wife pair of off-duty GCM officers were cornered by two suspects on a motorcycle. Gunfire erupted instantly. The male civil guard collapsed to the ground, feigning death in a desperate bid to stop the attackers from firing again. But the situation flipped in seconds. Believing their victim was neutralized, the robbers let their guard down. And that's when the officer made his move. In a sudden, calculated reversal, he drew his firearm from the ground and returned fire, hitting one of the suspects. The wounded attacker was subdued and arrested on the spot, while his accomplice fled the scene. A robbery attempt at a gold shop in Hat Yai, Thailand, ended in embarrassment for a 27-year-old man who tried to flee without paying for a 1 baht gold necklace he pretended to buy. As soon as he attempted to escape, the store's automatic security door locked him inside. Unable to get out, the would-be thief returned the broken necklace, begged for mercy, and eventually burst into tears as police arrived to arrest him. The shop owner said they had been suspicious from the start because the man left his motorcycle engine running and chose the largest necklace. Police quickly reached the scene and detained the suspect, who was later identified as having a criminal history and having previously served time in prison. The surveillance network of the Tigray Operations Center, COT, once again proved its effectiveness after identifying a stolen vehicle being driven through the district, a car that had been used to commit a crime in a shop in Escobar. Thanks to swift coordination between units, both occupants were apprehended and placed at the disposal of the justice system.